Why isn't there like $100 million Edgar Allan Poe like
Okay,
biopic?
time traveler goes back in time. Clearly, to us, the viewer, insane, but according to himself, the most sane man in the world, just
Sure.
wants to have a conversation with
Uh-huh.
Edgar because he's sure that Edgar is speaking to him directly from one of his stories.
Yeah.
One
I
thing
think
leads to another. Yeah.
this is great. Inadvertently causes the death of Edgar Allan Poe. Great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love it. That's what I'd do with the time machine. Kill Hitler? No.
No.
Get rich? No.
Just have an argument with.
Just want to talk
Yeah.
with my pal Edgar. Can I call you Edgar? No. Hello and welcome to Flanagan's Wake, a Doof Media podcast quoting the Flanagan. My name is Scott Daly and I am your host. Don't look at me like that, Matt. Joining me as always, coming to you live from the other side of this wall I'm slowly bricking up. And I wrote that before I had a reason to, but you just gave me one with that look, Matt Freeman. How you doing today?
With this eye of mine, this
fucking eye.
Weird eye.
I hate that eye.
Which one is it though?
It's kind of both.
Okay. Well, that's not good. That's even worse.
How are you doing this week, man?
Pretty good. I'm really excited to get to talk about Edgar Allan Poe again. A writer who I already liked a lot and I've come to realize is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of my idol now, actually. Unironically was like, oh, I should just throw away everything I know about writing and just read these stories and just copy him. I should just copy him.
Yeah. Edgar Allan Poe would love that, actually. Would love. It is funny thinking about people that have died a very long time ago and the number of people that have just completely, like, when you were the creation of a genre and a type of storytelling and that people have just copied you and it taken your style, like, thousands of people have done this since Edgar Allan Poe's time, and he would hate it. He would absolutely hate it. But he's dead, so who cares?
I wonder what he would think about the Treehouse of Horror. You think he'd like it?
He would love that. Everybody likes The Simpsons.
That's true. He would, actually. I think he would like The Simpsons.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. This week on the show, we are wrapping up our brief 2-part series talking about the stories of Edgar Allan Poe in preparation for Mike Flanagan's The Fall of the House of Usher. This week, we're talking about 4 additional stories and 1 poem. We'll be chatting about The Telltale Heart, Goldbug, The Pit and the Pendulum, The Cask of Amontillado, and we'll wrap things up with, of course, a little poem you might have heard about called The Raven. It's a big week, Matt. It's a lot of seminal Poe classics in this bunch.
Yeah, many of which I would have sworn that I had read. We were joking about this earlier. We sort of joked about this last week too, where you think you've read a Poe story and then you realize, no, you read some other author's riff on it, or you just feel like you've read it because it's so embedded in the zeitgeist that you're like, well, surely I've read it, and then you read Cask of Amontillado or it was the Pit and the Pendulum for me this week, where I was like, I really, really thought I had read this, but no, I have not. So
for me, I have read 4 of the 5 stories we're talking about today, but every single one of them I remembered vastly differently than they actually are. And not to the point where I'm like you, where did I actually read them? No, I know for a fact I did. I just emphasized or focused on a different thing, and then my brain blew it up over the last 20 or so years. I think it's gonna be fun talking about that, because I think that speaks to the way Poe is writing these stories and the settings and the emotions that he's tapping into in his writing. I've enjoyed the absolute hell out of this, Matt. I made a joke last week about this giant Poe book I have back here that I really just bought to be a thing I put on the shelf. It's gonna suck because these aren't fun to read, but I really do want to make time to just go through and read every single thing this guy has written.
Yeah.
And like we talked about a little bit last week, I do want to also read like his criticism, his literary theory, like the nonfiction stuff he wrote, because I did take the time. We mentioned last week there was basically a thing he wrote about the Raven and kind of the construction of the Raven to kind of peel back the curtain. It was called The Philosophy of Composition. And I did read that this week, and I was absolutely fascinated by that. I had this weird place where I disagreed with Edgar Allan Poe in a couple places, which is a weird thing to say out loud, because certainly I am no Poe, but I think we can bring that into our conversation about the Raven for sure.
Sure. Yeah. Sounds good.
Cool. All right. Before we get into it, just have a really quick announcement, you folks. If you haven't seen the news already, I have launched a new bonus thing I'm doing over on our Patreon. So Matt has a thing that he's doing on our Patreon that is the Knot, his choose your own adventure story he's writing. And I have decided that I'm going to be taking a look at the HBO classic television show that I've never seen called The Sopranos. So I by the time you're listening to this episode, the first episode of that will be out. It's going to come out every Tuesday over on our Patreon. I will be absolutely free. All you have to do is join the Patreon as a paid subscriber or a free subscriber. It'll be there for you. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a solo thing where it's just me, be watching the show, taking notes, and then talking about it. Should be fun. Should be a fun time. It's called Gabagool, Sopranos podcast. So check that out over on the Doof Media Patreon. That's patreon.com/doofmedia.
I'm looking forward to listening along without actually watching the show.
That's a choice. That's certainly a choice.
Yep. Join me, everyone.
I hope you are the only one that makes that choice, honestly.
Me too.
All right, Matt, you ready?
Yep.
Ready to get into these stories? We're going to begin with The Telltale Heart. This short story was first published in 1843 in James Russell Lowell's The Pioneer, a magazine at the time. This story is kind of a short one. It tells the story of an unnamed narrator recounting the events of a murder he committed. He starts off by making sure we understand that he's totally not crazy and he's completely sane, not crazy at all. He just, this old man, who we don't even know who the old man is to him. Is he a father figure? Don't know. But he had like a weird eye and it really bugged him. So he like snuck into his room for 8 days in a row and then like slowly, inexorably crept up to him and then he killed him. But he's totally not crazy.
It's incredible.
What'd you think?
I mean, I love it. You know, there's one thing just embedded in what you said there that I don't think ever really jumped out to me prior to this reading. And this is one that I definitely had read before, which is the element that this is his confession. Like,
yeah,
he is narrating the story to presumably someone in the legal system. Like that's he has been arrested and he's telling you, he's entreating you. Understand, I'm not crazy. I had to do it. The old man, his eye. Did you understand? Like that really, that actually, that's an important layer to the story. The fact that it's a story that's being told to us. We don't see the frame, but the frame is implied, which is like such a clever Poe thing where he's like, I'm gonna just casually have this be a framing story, but I'm not going to ever actually enunciate the framing story, but you're going to get it anyway.
Yeah. I mean, this literally starts in media res, right? Like the first word of the story is true, nervous, very dreadfully nervous. I had been and am. That's a response to a question that's been asked to him that we don't get to see. Yeah. Actually, I was thinking very much about Dolores Claiborne, which is a Stephen King novel. It's the one that kind of goes hand in hand with Gerald's Game. It is a novel that the entirety of the novel is Dolores's recounting of the story while she is being investigated by a police officer. He's got her there and is questioning her about a murder. And the whole novel is her recounting that to him, including the idea that sometimes he asks her questions and we don't get to hear the questions he asks her. We just hear her responses. I definitely feel like King was consciously channeling Poe with that for sure.
Because you imagine a person's immediately imagine them going, "Oh, you look nervous," and
Yeah.
then, um, yeah, like this one is great. I think it's this really nuanced investigation into delusional thinking and
Yeah.
deluded behavior, and we're sort of observing without comment as he describes these delusional leaps of logic and assumptions, and justifies himself with things that it's like it makes no sense. I think that there is a really cool source of horror that comes in there, where the horror is basically that the mad don't know that they're mad,
Yeah.
and so maybe you're mad, and how could you tell? How could you distinguish delusional thinking from sane thinking from the inside? I think that's one way in which the story is unsettling. And then I think another different, like totally opposite way in which the story is unsettling is putting yourself in the old man's position of having a person in your life, I guess by implication, someone you rely on, who is losing it. And maybe you're aware of it, maybe you're not aware of it. Maybe in either case, it's actually kind of terrifying to imagine that this guy had no idea that maybe this caretaker or this friend of his was gradually losing it, or maybe he suspected it but couldn't do anything about it. These are both. So like, there's all this horror that's like under the surface, never articulated. That's one of my favorite things about the story. It's the subtext and how much Poe trusts us.
I love that, because like this is classic unreliable narrator stuff, where he's like, oh, look how calm I was, and then he goes through this meticulous process of look how I meticulously planned this murder, and I set it all up, and for an hour each night for 7 nights I opened the door slowly and stuck my head in slowly, like inch by inch, for over an hour. And you can just imagine this idea that, okay, we have an unreliable narrator here. He's convinced of his own sanity. He's convinced that he's not acting insane. Can we perhaps believe that he's not quite as sneaky as he thinks he is? And this poor old man has endured a week of torment of where he hears his door open and then just feels the presence of a person for an hour, and then he just goes away, right? And then, like, of course, in the 8th day, the final day, he walks fully into the room. His presence is detected by the man, and once again, he waits and like interminable amount of time where this man is just like, this isn't like, it's so interesting that the setup of the story is like, I bear this man no ill will. Like, he was always kind to me. Like, I have no motive. I don't want money. I don't this, and this. But the way he goes about stalking and murdering him is torturous. It like, the idea that he's in the room, once the man is aware that there's a presence in the room, just go kill him, right? Like, there's no reason to draw this out again. But then he waits and waits and waits and waits. It's torture, and like, Jesus Christ, I love that. Yeah, getting back to his point of view. To pulling ourselves out of the narrator's point of view and seeing what this must have been like for this poor old man. Yeah. Jesus.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was also thinking, this is another thought I had this reading that I don't remember ever having on the previous readings, is that I don't think the cops are ever fooled. Because the narrator is telling us, oh, the cops just came in suddenly for no reason. And
I really want to live in 19th century America, by the way, where cops just like immediately show up anytime someone does something bad. Guy kills someone, puts them in their wall, bam, cops are there.
They just
Guy
showed
kills
up.
someone, puts them in the floor, bam, cops are there.
Yeah, but in this case, I feel like that's sort of an intentional quirk where you're supposed to be like, because okay, so in his narration, what he says is like, I killed him, and then I chopped him up and put him under the floorboards. And then the cops came, and I just engaged them in polite conversation. And they were totally relaxed. And what probably actually happened is he killed this guy in such a gruesome and loud fashion, and then loudly like tore his house apart to try to bury the body. By the way, probably made a huge mess and left all kinds of evidence that would have been found.
Yeah.
And then talking to the cops, he's probably coming off as completely unhinged, especially the part later when he says that he's hearing the sounds of the guy's hideous heart, and he says like he started shouting and raving and swearing while the cops just continued to sit there and chat peacefully. It's like, I don't think any of that happened that way. I think they were on
still
you.
The men chatted pleasantly and smiled is what he says.
Yeah, and you're just like, no, this guy doesn't actually understand what's happening around him. He's totally delusional.
Mm-hmm.
The cops were onto him the whole time. And I think that's interesting because I didn't read it. I don't remember ever thinking that any previous time that I read it.
Well, here's the thing that I think is so interesting about this, because this is indeed one of the ones I read as a kid, like maybe 7th grade, 8th grade, maybe even earlier. I don't know. And the thing that stuck with me, and the thing that I expected going into the story, was that I would be inundated with like paragraphs of this incessant old man's heartbeat as our character like tried to navigate talking to the cops and tricking the cops and getting through his day to day, that this would just be a like unstoppable like presence throughout a good chunk of the story. Because this is the thing everyone takes away about the story, right? It's like the beating of that hideous heart. That's the thing that everyone remembers. And that's like the thing attached to it is this is a story about a man who kills someone, and yet his guilt drives him to hear his heartbeat under the floors incessantly until he finally has to confess to the cops. But that's in the story itself. It's a paragraph. It's a single paragraph in which the beating of the heart gets more and more insistent, and it drives the narrator more and more insane. As you said, he has to start talking louder and louder to talk over the beating. And like, that is one paragraph in what is a pretty short story. But my brain had built this up over the decades since I read this story. And part of that is the cultural osmosis of this being repeated and used so many other times. But I built it up as this omnipresent, huge thing. And it's not that I was disappointed by the story, but I was just fascinated by the way my brain did that. And I think it speaks to the power of that one paragraph and the writing of that one paragraph to convey this idea, like just ballooned in my memory, because it so captivated me, the concept of it.
I definitely had the same experience. I think I can blame a lot of it on the Simpsons yet again. The episode where Lisa hides her classmate's diorama and then like the show itself shows like her hearing it and like the floorboard moving and everything. And it's a great riff on this, but it's like you remember that imagery, and it's like, well, that imagery, like you said, it's not even. It's almost the stinger at the very end, more so than the actual substance of the story itself.
I think he spends more time talking about the slow, deliberate way in which he, like, day after day snuck into the man's room and stood there awkwardly than he does the actual telltale heart itself. But which is fascinating.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you about this because I wasn't sure if I'm correct on this or not. So we were talking last week. We were reading The House of Usher. We were reading Mask of the Red Death. These are stories that had very long sentences, like very, very 19th century sentences, lots of semicolons, lots of em dashes. But we were comparing Poe to Henry James in the way in which, you know, those Henry James sentences could be unwieldy and you had to work your way through them. That the Poe stories were complicated but much more readable. But there was a part of me that was like, I remember reading this guy as a kid. And as much as I loved The Fall of the House of Usher and The Mask of the Red Death, which I did, I don't know if like 6th grade, 7th grade Scott could read that story and take away the meaning and have the image and memory of it imprinted in my head like I did for The Telltale Heart and for the Cask of Amontillado and stuff like that. And so I was like, was I like smarter back then and I've just gotten dumber, or was I just underestimating myself? But then a weird thing happened where I opened The Telltale Heart, and I do feel like this writing felt simpler to me, not like less profound and beautiful, but like just compositionally, easier to parse than something like House of Usher or Mask of the Red Death.
So this one in particular, this is one of these things that makes me love this one, because I feel like this one is literally written from the voice of this character, where this is not intended to be prose in the same sense, where he, it's written in a completely different style from the next one we're going to talk about, the Goldbug.
Yeah.
Where, that story, not to get ahead of ourselves, but that story is also being narrated, but it's being narrated from a character who strikes you as being very literate and, not afraid of using big words and complicated sentence structures. Whereas this story is literally an unhinged fellow just verbal diarrheaing at a investigator of some kind.
Sure.
And so that's the vocabulary, and that's the sentence structure. I mean, it's not as, it's at least in that direction. I think that's why this one in particular, this one is the most readable and straightforward. I don't think I don't remember any weird. I mean, if there are weird constructions, they're the stuff where it's like he's kind of interrupting himself with M dashes because he's speaking loud, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's right. I mean, I think it shows kind of this man's control of the language, that he not only recognizes good prose, but like when to shift his style. Because I mean, even like the Pit and the Pendulum is a much different, like, compositionally than the Telltale Heart, for sure. So I think you're just right there. Like, this is a man of dubious sanity, writing simple sentences, not complex structure. And that made young Scott just able to completely digest it and be really creeped out by it in the most wonderful way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a lot of it, I think, I do resonate with what you said a second ago about just feeling sort of surprised at, okay, let me start over. I remember trying to read The Raven when I was pretty young and bouncing off of it pretty hard. And I think this was even like after I had heard the Simpsons version of it. And I know we're not talking about The Raven yet, but I want to address this thing you're saying about like the language. And I think part of it is just like reading some of these sentences, especially when you don't really know the words and the usage of some of the words, but he's using them in an interesting way. Like, yeah. I'm just going to pull out one sentence from The Raven, part of a sentence where he says, "Much I marveled this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore." It's like, okay, to me at this age now, I'm like, hey, I get it.
Yeah.
No problem. When I was 10 or whatever, I would have been like, I have no idea what you're saying. I don't know what the word bore means there. I don't know what discourse means really. The use of the word plainly there is not going to be clear to a kid. I think that's a lot of what it is, where it's just like our ear has tuned into it a little bit, but it's not like he's being that obscure. It's just a little bit not what we're used to. That's all.
Yeah. No, I think you're right there. Yeah. I mean, we are in the middle of, or I guess I'm at the tail end of reading Moby Dick, which I wouldn't say is necessarily like a compositionally difficult novel to parse. But it's just a different kind of, it's a different style. Like, these people wrote differently back then. I feel like if we continue along this path of like Henry James, Edgar Allan Poe, Melville, it looks like Mary Shelley is going to win next month for us right now, Matt.
Uh-huh.
Like, eventually, if I spent like a year reading nothing but 19th century literature, I'll probably be able to read it and parse it just as fast as I could a contemporary novel. You just kind of feel your mind like getting into the groove of it.
The worst part, Scott, is I'm starting to like it.
Why is that? That's a good part.
No, I mean, like, the funny thing, I think it's just because I've always thought my whole life this is so stuffy and impenetrable, and why would anyone write this way? And now I find myself going along with Moby Dick and just being like, this is awesome. I want to write like this.
I can't wait to talk to you about Moby Dick. Yeah. I mean, I agree, but I can't wait. I like it a lot too. Back to Henry James. Let's read The Portrait of a Lady next.
Yeah.
Cool. That's the way to get yourself off of I like it. Oh, I'm starting to like it. Let's hang out with Henry James for a novel and see how that goes.
Oh dear. Okay.
I do have one final question for you before we move on from this story. What do you think, like, what is Poe trying to say or explore about humanity with stuff like this? So I think maybe this is a little bit premature, but we have the Black Cat last week. We have this story again. And then as we'll talk about the Cask of Amontillado, we are once again being put into the head of a killer, a killer of dubious sanity, witnessing them do this horrible thing. What are we ultimately doing here? Because a story once again about guilt. The guilt of what you've done drives you to something. I did pick up on the thing, we haven't said it yet, but the very beginning of this story, our narrator is like seemingly suffering from the same malady that Roderick Usher does, and that in that story that he is like his senses are all heightened to the point of causing him great distress and pain. What are we doing, I guess, is my final question for you on this one.
I feel like Poe scholars might have the answer to this, but I certainly haven't studied him as a person that much. So I'm just going to kind of shoot from the hip here and say, I think that he has a fascination with people doing horrible things and wanting to understand that.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, why do I say that? Well, it's kind of Stephen King's exact answer to the same question of like, why do you write about this dark stuff? And it's like, I just want to understand, I need to get inside the head of a person who could do something like this because I don't understand it and it disturbs me.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I can get some feeling of control or at least understanding of this horror if I can inhabit it and create it in a safe way, in a fictional way where you're not actually hurting anyone.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why we are fascinated by it too, right? Like we talked, I think another reason why I sort of reach for this answer is I'm just like, I think we all resonate with this because that's kind of why we read horror. And we talked the other day about serial killer stories. We were talking about the Midnight Club and serial killer stories. And we were talking about like, why are people fascinated by serial killer stories or the reality of serial killers? And I think part of the answer is just like, look, it's so horrible. It's so outrageous that you're like, I have to understand what this is because it's the worst thing I can think of. And the fact that it's real is nightmarish. And so I need to just, I have no choice other than to understand it because it's so terrifying.
Yeah.
I don't know if I answered your question, but yeah.
I think so, especially in a time, I think that, in general, violent crime has, over the course of the last 200 years, gone down, right? We're not perfect as a people, but I think there's less senseless, horrible killings today than there were probably in 1843. And so, yeah, you can see a man looking at, what he's reading in the paper and what he's seeing in the world and being like, I don't understand this. Like, they find corpses and there's no reason, and they cart someone away and there's no reason for it. And is quote unquote modern life at the time driving people insane? Like, are we like, I what I like to do sometimes with old stories is like find the ways in which history repeats itself and the ways in which people have been having the same arguments about what modernity is doing to us, because I just feel like that's an argument that every generation has had since the beginning of time. And so I like to look at Poe, and this is all just conjecture, I don't know any of this, but like examining modern life in the 1840s and being like, what hath we wrought that like this like people senselessly destroying each other, and trying to get sense of it. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think the sort of industrial revolution time was probably very alienating in many ways. And I think that might be part of what he's, the world appears to be getting worse.
Yeah.
I appear to be surrounded by madness and darkness. And I want to write about that. I want to write about that feeling And in order to write about that feeling, I'm going to write a story from the perspective of a character who's insane, who's an insane murderer.
Yeah. But I also like that idea. Like, I think you're right. But I also like the idea of by having him be an insane murderer that does not know he's insane, or perhaps is sane under the normal understanding of what sane is. Like, like before we had the ability to diagnose these things accurately, a man saying, I'm not insane. Look how calmly and healthily I can tell you the story. That's not insanity. And there are some doctors that would go, oh yeah, he's got a point there. He's not like acting crazy and like running around. Maybe he's not insane because we just didn't understand it, right?
Yeah.
And so like a real examination into what insanity means, and maybe the deepest, darkest fear that is that perhaps this man isn't insane. And what would that mean if a person could just do something like this, a meaningless, horrible crime, and is not insane under our modern understanding of that word? What does that mean about us?
Yeah.
About people?
It's interesting to me how he doesn't really ever have an overt Christian subtext, but there is an interesting way in which you can talk about like culpability and sin, how that interacts with like, well, what if you're just crazy? Mm-hmm. Like, and he doesn't really address it, but it's something that definitely occurred to me.
Sure.
I just was reminded while you were talking, like, we think about like I forget that the words like mad, it's like to somebody of Poe's time, that was basically the best term or descriptor that you had. Freud didn't start doing his thing until decades after the story was written. Mm-hmm. And we now sort of look back on Freud as being just kind of not quite a quack, but just like he got the ball rolling on something that we now understand much better.
Sure.
So in Poe's time, I mean, you could argue Poe is doing something like psychiatry, like he's trying to figure this out because nobody understands it at that point in time. Why does a person snap and kill their neighbor with a hammer? We have no idea.
Yeah.
So
we call it mad, but because that's all we know what to do with it. But we also have I like this, like a very outward facing description of what a quote unquote mad person looks like. Mm-hmm. And then you have a man sitting here calmly recounting the story to you, and emphasizing their calm recounting of the story.
Yeah.
But to us, and I think the intention of the story is you read what he's doing and you go, oh no, you're fucked.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I like this.
Cool.
All right. You ready to move on?
Yeah.
The Goldbug. This was the only story I had not read up until this week. It is also the longest story that we'll be talking about today. It's about 30 pages, I think. Once again, Poe does not enjoy long form storytelling. I think he wrote one novel, didn't care for it, moved on. The story, The Goldbug, was published in 1843 in the Philadelphia Dollar newspaper. It is a story about a man who finds a strange golden bug while wandering in the wilderness, which eventually leads him to some buried pirate treasure. He asks the narrator, his good friend, and his black servant? It's unclear to me.
His very good friend.
Yeah, his very good black friend, to assist him in digging it up, and then explains to our narrator and to us the events that led him to discover this hidden treasure. Matt, what did you think of Goldbug?
I found this one quite engaging. I mean, you said it was long. It was long, but it really had me the whole time. It's almost a fun adventure. Like it was the most in the direction of being a fun adventure out of any of the Poe stories we've covered. Go ahead.
Totally agree. I think I looked this up. This is for one reason or another, Poe's most widely read story in his contemporary time. So this is the one that got published and reprinted and read the most amount of times. I believe it was kind of chopped up into 3 pieces and then published in a newspaper or magazine over several months, which you can kind of see how the hook of the story is like really engaging and like the to be continued of it if you don't know where'd you get the gold? What is the cipher? How'd you like the mystery at the center of it? This is not a Poe detective story, but it is essentially a mystery.
Yeah,
so you can kind of see why that really caught on with people.
definitely. I thought that was pretty interesting what you just said, that element of it, because it's a treasure hunt story, but it's a treasure hunt story that is wrapped in a weird package where the narrator the narrator sort of serves the same function as the narrator in the Murders of the Rue Morgue, where he's just kind of an idiot who doesn't know important information and isn't actually the smart problem solver in the story. The smart problem solver in both cases is his friend. And in this particular case, he thinks that his friend is crazy and like falling prey to either madness or perhaps some kind of curse caused by the bug. I feel like we're at least meant to be suspicious of that. But
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, no, you go ahead.
Well, but then it turns out that like, no, actually his friend was just completely right and had figured all this out and was essentially just trolling him because he was annoyed with how rude he had been.
Yeah.
And then it's only after sort of all the action has been resolved that his friend explains everything, which is like the fun, the detective explaining what happened in the drawing room.
Yeah. And it is very fun. I read that like there was a time in the early 1840s that Edgar Allan Poe like got really into ciphers and was like putting ciphers in the local newspaper and like daring people to try to solve them. And I read at the time that like cryptology and like the concept of how you actually solve these word ciphers was like so ununderstood that it appeared as if magic to people. Like people that just did not understand how this whole thing worked. Like they just did not get it. It was like, how the fuck did you do that? So the idea of like crafting a whole story around the concept of like, I'm going to explain to people how these things are solved, how this works. I'm going to educate the public on how this whole thing works is a really fun idea. And I think the more I read about Poe, the more I read of Poe's writing again, and that the composition one we talked about, it seems like he generally does start with an idea of like the ending first. Like the whole thing in the Raven composition is that like every good story should start with the end first. You define so you know exactly where you're going, and then you can build to that. And this feels like he started with the idea that I'm going to explain ciphers to people, and therefore I'm gonna craft my entire story here around that cipher at the end of it.
Yeah, I mean, and it's fun. Like I have definitely read more about ciphers and cryptography than some average person in 1840. But like for the average person in 1840, that was probably riveting because you're just
yeah. I mean, it was riveting for me, and I understand the principle of it. Yeah, because I've played those puzzle games that you do a easier version of it.
I mean, I remember the first time somebody ever explained to me, like, well, you start with the fact that the letter E is the most common. And then if you can find a repeating sequence of 3 letters, it's probably the.
Yeah.
And then now you have THE, and then it's like, oh my God. Like something that sounded totally impossible to you 5 minutes ago, which is like taking this and turning it into an answer, is just like, no, you out of nothing, you seem to have picked out the solution. And that's so cool. And Poe obviously thinks it's so cool, and he manages to write it in a way where even if you already know all that stuff, you're still like, that's fun. I like that.
Yeah. I did have a very weird experience with this story because this was the one that I did not know. I did not know anything. I did not know what kind of story we were in until I finished it, right? And so the whole time reading this story, and I should have gone back and read it again because I wonder how different the experience would have been on a reread. But the whole time I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, right? Is the Goldbug like a magical evil bug that did actually bite the guy? And I think that part of it is supposed to be like Poe fucking with you. But I wonder, this is 1843. I don't believe the Raven had released yet. So I think Poe was sort of well known at the time, but not like super well known. But I wonder if this is him playing with expectation as well, because there was a feeling of waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like I was like, okay, something magical is going on here. And then slowly you realize, no, nothing magical is going on here. So I'm like, okay. There's nothing supernatural here. But this guy's going to like totally fucking kill the guys after he gets the treasure, right? That's going to be our hook ending, is he explains the whole process to him and says, and now you die. And I was waiting the whole time for something like that to happen. And of course it doesn't, because it is actually just a fairly simple, straightforward treasure hunt tale where we hunt for treasure. And then, as you said, the detective gathers our participants in a room and explains how he solved the case. And that's it. And it's riveting. It's fascinating. But yeah, I mean, like, I'm reading Edgar Allan Poe. I'm reading a story about titled Goldbug, about a creepy gold beetle that seems like ultimately doesn't matter to the story at all. Actually,
that was the funniest part, is this gold beetle that's like weirdly heavy and makes you think maybe this is a real beetle made of real gold, and it's just a complete red herring. It's completely so I only listened to it the one time, so help me if I didn't get something straight, but it's like the only consequence of the beetle is that it results in someone giving him a piece of parchment to wrap it up in.
Yes.
And then the parchment is the treasure map.
Yeah.
So it has nothing to do with the beetle. It just so happens that somebody gave him something to wrap the beetle in, and that's it.
Yes.
Which is
correct. And then even at the moment where you think something still has to do with the beetle, where he drops, it's the beetle we have to drop through the human skull, the left eye socket. That turns out to be no. That was literally just the guy being like, well, you guys are pissing me off, so I thought I'll do the beetle.
Yeah.
It could have been a bullet.
There was so much tension, though. You're right. In the waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'm thinking back to that scene where he has his servant climb the tree. You're just like, this guy's gonna fall out of the tree and die. The branch is gonna break. He's gonna kill one of them with a shovel. Something horrible is gonna happen. They're gonna have to bury the body with the shovels. That's why they're gonna, like going out into the woods with shovels in the first place. You're just like, somebody wants to bury somebody. This is not going in a good direction. So that's one of the fun things about the story, is the whole thing is so well constructed to keep throwing these signals and red herrings that make you think we're going in a totally different direction.
Yeah.
And it's actually, the funny thing in this one is he's laying on all of these horror tropes. I mean, it's almost like a comedy. It's almost like the Cabin in the Woods or something, where he's like gesturing in all these directions using tropes, and then it's like, no. Actually, it's just a fun treasure hunt.
Yeah.
Fooled ya. I love it.
It seems like he's just gonna split the treasure with the two of them, which I was convinced that there's no way he's gonna do that. He's gonna get greedy. Like I was really racking my brain. I was like, maybe the gold bug is like a metaphor for like this sickness that we all get when we're like inundated with treasure and wealth and greed, and like, but it's not really that, right? Like I really tried to search for like a deeper metaphorical meaning of this thing, and I just don't think it's there. I mean, you can try to read some stuff into it if you want to. I mean, the guy who finds the treasure that befriends our narrator, like, a formerly wealthy man that like lost his fortune, moved out to this little house, this little shack on this uninhabited island, essentially, and befriends our narrator. Maybe we're trying to say something about capitalism there in 1840. I don't know. I couldn't really come up with anything, but I was like so primed for it. I was like so waiting for it, and it just never really. And that, by the way, I'm not saying that as like a critique of the writing. Like, I think it's a fantastically entertaining story. It's just like I read the Mask of the Red Death, which is a story essentially is one big metaphor, and then I read Goldbug, which is just an adventure treasure hunt story, and it's like, wow, these are the same dude within years of each other. Sometimes you want to write a deeply layered metaphor for the plight of humanity and the fight of mortality, and sometimes you just want to talk about ciphers.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, I think I'm really glad that this one made it onto our list, because I feel like without the inclusion of this story, I would still have this sense of just like, yeah, Poe just likes to write about madness and evil and death and loss. And
yeah, like even the detective story is still a story about like senseless, horribly violent, terrible death.
Yeah, yeah,
right.
Yeah,
it just so happened to be done by an ape.
Yeah,
not a human.
The only death in this one is, you know, a kind of implication that the pirate killed whoever he was sharing the treasure with, but even that is, I mean, that's more sort of like
played as like a joke at the very end of the story.
Right. And it's sort of for some reason I feel like pirate violence is like a separate magisterium where it's like, you know, Pirates of the Caribbean or whatever, where it's like, but they're just pirates. That's kind of what they do, you know.
Pirate's gonna pirate.
They're not real. Yeah.
I do want to talk to you about Jupiter a bit.
Sure.
Who is the black manservant. So like, okay, I'm not gonna sit here and be like, let's cancel Edgar Allan Poe for his racist depiction of a black man in 1843. I'm not going to do that. Obviously, yes, this is not a very flattering depiction of a black man. He is made out to be stupid and like kind of bumbling. What I will say, the only comment and critique I will have is I found the choice to depict Jupiter's dialect the way the story wrote it, and maybe you had a different experience, maybe it plays better in audiobook. I found it terribly distracting, and I kind of just wanted to speed through every time Jupiter's talking, because like it's just like you have to focus to parse the way he's writing the spelling of the dialect the guy's speaking. I did not care for it at all.
Well, I'm sure I had a different experience, just specifically because the audiobook reader goes whole hog with the dialect.
Oh geez.
I mean, well, so it's interesting, right? Because like there is a degree of OGs, because you're like, oh, okay, but like I can't help but connect this to Detta Walker.
Sure.
and
sure.
Like I don't think, which by the way, the audiobook reader also went all in on that. Now, do I think that Poe is doing some kind of complicated deconstructive critique of race relations? Not really, but maybe a little bit, because I think it's okay, not very much. I'm bending over backwards to extend a bit of charity to Poe here, but like I think it's interesting because we do see like the white guy treating his servant really meanly, in a way where I feel like it's meant to come off as like, why are you being so mean to this guy? Like, this guy obviously takes good care of you and cares about you and actually kind of seems to love you, and you're just constantly barking orders at him and calling him stupid and
having him do all the grunt work, right? He's got to climb up into the tree, he's got to hang out on the dead limb that may or may not support his weight, and he's constantly belittling him.
I don't think it's just my 21st century eyes that are making me think that the reader is meant to say, why are you being so mean to him? He's, because it's over the top. Like it really is over the top how unnecessarily, and at the same time, the black man is depicted as like genuinely looking out for the well-being of this guy who he's taking care of.
Yeah, I mean, he comes to the narrator, like he visits the narrator on the mainland, like, hey, I'm really worried about your friend. Like, I'm legitimately concerned for his well-being. Please come immediately.
So anyway, I mean, the dialect stuff, it does make it a little hard to metabolize in this day and age. But I do think, I don't think I'm making something up here. I think that Poe is gesturing in a humane and progressive direction with this character. Ultimately,
I think you're right. I mean, I did read that like in 1843, for a white man to write a black character into a story and allow him to speak in that story was progressive for the time. So like we're setting our bar pretty low here, but you know, it's 1843, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, my critique of it is solely I found it difficult to read those sections and really like had to reread and reread to see the way he's combining the sounds together, the spelling of the sounds to actually make the sentence for what the story is trying to communicate to me through what this guy said. I just found it distracting and I didn't like it. And I agree that we're doing something with the black character.
Yeah.
But the dialect part, I think,
Sure.
is not what we're doing with it. I think that's just him tapping into probably popular sentiment about how black people talked.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just so for your edification, you know, the audiobook reader, the way they did it, it literally just sounds like the Dead of Walker dialect. Like it's just
Sure.
it's just exact like you'll just be that's what he's doing. Like I get that on the page it's written in a way where Poe is being a little bit avant-garde in how he's trying to spell these things, but he's just trying to write that particular dialect. That's all, and it just is hard to parse. I get that.
Yeah, maybe King just has found a way to construct these words together to make them more readable. I mean, this is the same author that in a couple stories, the noise he writes for someone coughing is ung.
Yeah.
Maybe people in the 1840s just cough differently.
Maybe. Yeah. So just I'll just throw this in as a like data point because I had to look it up. So you know you're saying his depiction here was ahead of its time, and you know Huck Finn didn't come out until 1884.
Yeah,
a good stretch of time after this book, and in fact, the Civil War fell between the publication of the Goldbug and Huck Finn. Yeah. So that's how much history happened in between those two things. So yes, I get it.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Good story though. I quite enjoyed this one.
Yeah.
All right. You ready for the next one?
I believe so. Yeah, I guess I just wanted to comment how funny it is that the Goldbug is just a complete red herring. Yeah.
Yeah. What was the Goldbug? Is it actually made of gold?
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
All right. Next, we have The Pit and the Pendulum. This story was first published in 1842 in, get this, the literary annual The Gift, A Christmas and New Year's Present for 1843. Merry fucking Christmas, everyone. Here's The Pit and the Pendulum.
I mean, it's an all-time classic, so...
Just gather your family around the fire on a Christmas morning. We got this annual. Let's all read it. Which story do you want to read?
It's from that young Mr. Poe.
I do okay. Probably my least favorite of the stories we're talking about tonight. Not to say that I don't like it, but probably my least favorite. And part of it is the ending, which again, I think what I'm doing is once again creating a reality in my head that didn't exist because I found the image of this incredibly slow, deliberately moving pendulum just like endlessly captivating when I was a young kid and read about it, that I just made up that the pendulum just kills him. And that's what I thought. That's what I remembered happening in the story. And so I'm reading along and suddenly he's like using the rats to break out of his bindings. And then suddenly the walls are moving. And I'm like, I don't remember any of this.
Yeah.
Then the very end is that the French army swoops in at the last possible second and saves him. And I have a completely unsubstantiated theory that he submitted this story to the Christmas and New Year's literary annual, and they took one look at the story and said, absolutely fucking not, Edgar. You have to give it a happy ending.
Right.
You cannot just end on this guy fucking dying.
They probably just added a couple sentences there, yeah. I mean, I think there's a good chance you're right. It doesn't feel like a typical ending for his story, but I don't know. Who knows? I will say, like, it's a weird ending because I would have at least expected, if he was going to be saved, that we would see, like, okay, he's saved, but his mind is broken now,
right?
Because of the situation, and we don't see that. So
right. Well, that's my main, like, okay. So it feels weird to critique a story for, like, a thing that I decided the metaphor of the story meant, and then the ending kind of like throws that away, and so now I'm saying that's the story's problem. But I was reading the story the other day, and I'm like, oh, I see what we're doing here. The pit and the pendulum. We have two forms of death. One is the unknown darkness. Like, you could just be walking along and you just fall into a pit. It's quick, it's unknown, but it's out there, right? And then you have the pendulum, this slow, deliberate, I mean, represented, like, it's literally Father Time holding the pendulum. And so it's this slow, inexorable death, this ever so slow, painfully slow, but you know it's coming. And it's like, okay, those are like the two different types of death people can experience, right? You have, you know, if you have a long illness, you can kind of see the end of your road, or even just old age, right? And then you have just sometimes the mysteries of life. You don't even see what's coming that will eventually kill you. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. We're like doing a commentary on, like, the way people live and the way we handle death and the way we think about death and the way death can attack us. And then everything after that happens, and I was like, okay, so maybe I was wrong. But I don't know how to square everything after the escape from the pendulum to my theory, which I still think is, like, maybe not thematically, but, like, metaphorically, we don't have to say intentional. I think it's there. I think it's present in the story.
Yeah. I mean, he escapes from the pendulum, but then he's still gonna have to fall in the hole, but then he's saved, right? So I agree that, okay, I'll just say I didn't have the same metaphorical thought as you, but I do really like that. And putting someone in a position where they have to choose between the two. I mean, you can get really dark with it and say, you know, would you rather just throw yourself into the pit if you're faced with the slow, agonizing, painful, you know, mind-breaking fear of the pendulum? I just want to say parenthetically, like, that's the level on which, for me, the story really kind of shocked me. Because again, this is one that I thought I had read. Maybe I read and forgot about, but let's just say I never read it before. And I was like, this is such an interesting, fresh feeling, modern feeling book from the perspective of the character psychology and the sort of psychic distance from the character. It's and the detail orientedness around the perceptions. It's this study of perception almost centrally, because like the first few paragraphs are dragging you into the sensory experience of being this person in this horrible claustrophobic environment where it's dark and you don't know what's happening. And so it's describing sensations on a very raw level, and you're disoriented, and you're sort of with this character, you're grasping for some kind of interpretation of what you're experiencing.
Yeah.
Because all you know is it's dark and there are certain sensations that you're feeling, and you're trying to assemble them into a map of what's happening. And that's a kind of horror. That's a kind of terror. But it's also simultaneously the work that is doing is it's drawing you into this character's perspective. So you're identifying very close. You're reading. You're paying attention very closely, because you're like, what the hell is happening? What is happening? And by doing that, like, okay, we start to answer these questions. We start to actually explain what's happening, and now we're really attentively absorbing these terrible claustrophobic impressions.
Hmm.
And so now he's tricked you into being super close with this character as you realize, oh, you were in a Saw trap. You're in a trap from the film Saw, except it's 1843. Um, and I wanted to make that connection at some point anyway, that like Gerald's Game, Saw, like that, like so much of the modern horror genre is some form of like the Lady or the Tiger, the Pit or the Pendulum, Scylla or
Yeah.
Charybdis. It's are you going to accept the whirling maw of instant death, or the slower but equally inevitable painful death that at least you'll live a little bit longer, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
so anyway, yeah, sorry, I went off there, but what do you think?
No, it's great. I think you're right. I mean, I think this is so well constructed. The thing that really stood out to me was the descriptive words around the senses. Like, I think the Poe kind of forces us to zoom in, and then he just pummels us with words around the five senses, or at least the those of the five senses our character has, to be able to understand his situation he's in, and get a feeling. And we're so like, I like the idea of we're being close to him, because we're both close to him, and how we're deeply concerned with what's going on with him and the answers to the questions. But that closeness also like distorts our ability to see what's going on as well. Like we're like physically close to him. I'm talking in like camera work perspectives, where like he's filling up so much of the frame that we, the audience, don't get to see the rest of the frame either. And so like we're kind of desperately trying to get to, as Poe is throwing these words at us about what he's feeling and what he's seeing or not seeing and what he's smelling. Like, I love the use of words around those senses. Like when he first falls into the pit, it's the smell of the pit, right? Like I love the sentence where my chin rested upon the floor of the prison, but my lips and the upper portion of my head, although seemingly at a less elevation than the chin, touched nothing. At the same time, my forehead seemed bathed in a clammy vapor, and the peculiar smell of decayed fungus arose in my nostrils. So, like, the pit itself is represented in the smell, and then the pendulum is represented in noise. That we get to hear about, like the hiss of and constant of this pendulum. Just like, you don't hear it, you're reading a book, but you do hear it, and you smell like he just does such a just incredible job using words to tap into these senses that we have. I loved it. So I think you're right. Like, everything the book does, or the story does in the very beginning, gets us primed for sight, sound, touch, these feelings, and the way that he makes us through his writing feel them too.
I almost felt like overstimulated when he gets to the description of, I think at this point, actually, he's like imagining it. He's not even sensing it. He's like imagining what the sensation of the pendulum cutting through like the first threads of his garment is going to feel like. And we're going like microscopic detail on like what the dragging of the blade along the fibers is going to feel like and sound like.
Yeah.
And you're just like, it's pretty incredible, like as descriptive writing and as creating tension and sensation, where like nothing is even happening yet. It's just the fear of the thing.
I don't think I ever fully understood too, like, just how slow the pendulum itself. I mean, there might be some exaggeration here. The character says days go by, days, and maybe it's not days, but maybe it is, right? Maybe that's part of this torture. Is it's like it's going to be so absurdly slow that just by the time it gets to you, you're going to be like, come on, just fucking do it, just go. I can't take this anymore. And so, yeah, the reason he's so acutely imagining these sensations is because he has nothing else. Like, he's just been waiting for this for hours and hours and hours. Very effective writing.
I felt like I'm on the same page as you, actually, that like the ending, I feel one of the rare times I'm going to say I think I would have liked it better if there were at least some implication that like he he is broken now,
Yeah.
like they come in to get him and he like tries to throw himself down the pit or something. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what it would look like exactly. And so maybe it's intended that it's just like, and now he has to live his life having had this experience where the pendulum will always be over his head.
Yeah.
No matter where he goes.
Yeah. It didn't feel like that. It felt just like, oh, the French are here. Whew.
Yeah.
Just on time.
I'm saved.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really the only bad thing I have to say about it is that I think this is another one I read as a kid and definitely had a profound impact on me. And again, I blew it up in my head. I think the evocative imagery of this slow moving pendulum that is going to get you eventually. And there's nothing you can do about it unless you grab some meat and rub it on your bindings and have rats chew you out of it. Really clever, by the way. Clever.
So I think the more I think about this, the more I suspect that maybe I read this and I read the Cask of Amontillado like in the same sitting as a youth, and my brain turned it into like he ties down the guy and then uses the pendulum on him rather than breaking him up or something. Like I definitely had like that mental image in my head that is from nothing, because that's not a thing that happens. So maybe I did read it and I just screwed up the image in my head.
Yeah, I don't know. I definitely thought the pendulum killed him, so made that up in my head.
Yeah, these are just other versions of the collected works of Poe that are floating around with different endings.
One more thing I want to say before we leave is his use of repetition of words too. Like the most obvious example of it is with the pendulum itself, where has multiple paragraphs that start with down steadily it crept, down certainly restlessly, down still unceasingly, down. Like it just, this repetition really gets us into the rhythm of the swinging pendulum. But I did notice he does it a little before the character's even tied up to the pendulum too.
Interesting.
In the second paragraph of the story, the character says, "I had swooned, but still will not say that all consciousness was lost. What of it remained I will not attempt to define or even describe. Yet all was not lost. In the deepest slumber, no. In delirium, no. In a swoon, no. In death, no. Even in the grave, all is not lost." That repetition of no too. I was just kind of, I was on the lookout for repetition and that. And I just thought it was interesting that that's another example of he's using the word no again and again in rapid succession like that.
Well, and it's almost, I mean, you can see the poet there because it's like no and down.
Yeah.
Similar sounds, and they're making a tempo to the feeling. You can no, down. No, it's a metronome. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. I think this guy is pretty good at writing.
Yeah.
I actually had my father-in-law randomly ask me a question this week, because sometimes he asks me questions like he's the social media manager for a pop culture podcast for some reason. But his question was like, what is your favorite author from more than 100 years ago? I was like, I don't know where that came from. And I said Edgar Allan Poe. I mean, it was recency bias a little bit, but Edgar Allan Poe.
I think that's probably true for me. I mean, I don't know how much I've read from more than 100 years ago, to be honest. I mean, I feel like a lot of it has been in recent months.
Fair.
But yeah, no, I feel like I probably agree.
Yeah. All right. You ready? Cask?
Let's cask it up.
Amontillado.
I
have my doubts. All right, the Cask of Amontillado, 1846, only 3 years before Edgar Allan Poe's death. This one was published in Godey's Lady's Book, which I read was like one of the biggest magazines of the time. Most number of subscribers to this magazine.
Cool.
So in this story, a man seeks revenge on someone for harming him. The details of what he did to him are left unsaid. To do so, he lures him into a crypt with the promise of some delicious Amontillado wine, and then chains him to a wall and slowly, inexorably bricks him in, and then leaves him to die. Love this one. Read this one as a kid too. Another thing where I could have sworn that the actual bricking up of the character was very slow and deliberate over the course of many paragraphs, but it's a little bit. There's more of the story than that is the bricking up than the Telltale Heart was the beating heart, but it still kind of happens at the end quickly.
Yeah, I had a similar perception. I had read this one. Once again, very modern feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, protagonist who is clearly, well, it's interesting. I was going to say clearly mad, but then I'm like, well, maybe he's just evil because he wants revenge on this guy. Does he have to be mad to be a monster? I think that's actually kind of interesting because I think a lot of we have a lot of Poe characters who are, you know, insane from the inside, like the Black Cat last week. But this guy, it's not clear that he's insane. He could just be like a hateful, evil person.
Yeah.
It's kind of what I was thinking about when I mentioned earlier about like the nature of sin and evil and so forth in the face of madness. It's like, how are we supposed to think about these things?
Yeah.
Because this guy just seems very cold-blooded about the whole thing and relishing in the suffering that he's inflicting. This is a big contrast actually with Telltale Heart, where that guy he was like, I bear no will ill to the old man, but you know he has to die. But this guy he's so enjoying the whole process. He enjoys manipulating his victim. He enjoys giving his victim many chances to leave. He keeps saying, "Oh, the niter and the your cough. Are you sure? Are you sure you want to go down here? Okay, if you insist." Like several times. And that's like, there's a lot. I'm trying to think what this reminds me of, but anyway, yeah, it's one of the most effective elements of this. I feel like that was a thing that got borrowed a lot later. Was this idea of giving the victim a chance and having that be a huge source of tension.
Yeah, and enjoyment from him as well. Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with everything you said. I think it is very interesting the way Poe characterizes both of these characters in these stories, because you have our narrator, who, the thing starts with the 1,000 injuries of Fortunato I had borne as best I could, but when he ventured upon insult, I vowed revenge. But he never goes into what those 1,000 injuries are. He never goes into what final insult, with the straw that broke the camel's back. Even at the moment of him standing there slowly bricking up this guy, he doesn't like stop and be like, "Hey, this is why I'm fucking doing this to you. Like, I want you to know as I kill you what you did to piss me off so much." We don't know. It is like, it's the mystery of the piece. And I'm not even saying it's a mystery meant to be solved. I think there are little bits and pieces of, like, you know, he was a respected man who had a wealth and family, and he's lost it all now. And presumably Fortunato had something to do with that. But I do think it's an interesting choice to not really define that. And on the other side of the coin, we have Fortunato, who seems like charitably just like a fucking idiot. Right? I mean, like, so here's a question I have for you. Like, they have this whole thing where he goes to him and he says, "Hey, I bought this thing of Amontillado, and I didn't even check it. So I'm going to go to this guy Lucchesi and see if he can tell me if it's real Amontillado or not." And the guy's like, "Oh, that guy's stupid. He doesn't know. He can't even tell Amontillado from sherry." There are two readings of this, right? First, I should say Amontillado is sherry. It's a type of sherry. So the one reading is Fortunato is a drunk, lush idiot who is so drunk he doesn't even realize that. And so this idea of, he's saying that guy can't even tell the difference between Amontillado and sherry, not even realizing that it is sherry. So Fortunato's an idiot. The other read of it is just like what he's actually saying there is like he can't tell an Amontillado from a regular everyday type of sherry, right? Like he would drink an Amontillado, which is a sherry, and just say, oh, that's sherry. It's like, no, it's not sherry. It's Amontillado. I don't know which way to read it. I kind of like the former because I do think it's very interesting the way maybe it's just because we're in the perspective of this narrator who hates this guy so much, but he does make him seem like an idiot. Like we're supposed to believe this guy is like a wine connoisseur. Like he's a high taste, high class individual with his wine. But he's like fucking drunk as shit. And when the narrator's handing him wine to drink to kind of keep him drunk and ply him, he's just like knocking him back and throwing him down. He's not even tasting him. Like just not the type of like wine snob you would expect a person that is like known for their appreciation or can drink and tell an Amontillado. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Totally. I mean, that's I think the thing that sort of elevates this from quote unquote just a great horror story into kind of an interesting thing to mull over, where you're just like, what's really happening here? You know, who is this guy really? What's really going on between these two characters? Because I feel like the way they communicate with each other is interesting and full of subtext and like restraint. I don't know if this is a perfect example of what we're talking about exactly, but like the final exchange as he's been breaking him up in the wall,
mm-hmm.
and Montresor is the guy doing the breaking. Fortunato, tries one last desperate gambit where he's like, ha ha ha, very good joke indeed, an excellent jest. We had many a rich laugh about it. Ha 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 ha. And then Montresor goes, the Amontillado. And then he's like, yes, the Amontillado, yes. Shall we go back now? and then Montresor says, yes, let us be gone. And then the last thing we hear Fortunato go is, for the love of God, Montresor. and that's it. And like he doesn't say anything else. And it's like I this is one of those things where it's so it's so subtle that I almost don't know what my point is in having read that to you. I'm just like, I just love how he lets this dialogue stand on its own as this like chilling exchange of these two men who are meaning different things by the things that they're saying, and they both know it. Like they both know it, right? They both know exactly what the other person is doing, and I think that's kind of happening in the whole story, not just here.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, the constant exchange about the Amontillado, like I love this one in particular. The Amontillado ejaculated my friend, not yet recovered from his astonishment. True, I replied. The Amontillado. And like that is, there's so much underwritten there in both those exchanges. I completely agree.
That's what I meant when I said it felt modern, where it's just leaving it there for you to imbue with your own interpretation.
Yeah. I need you to work into your story someone like exclaiming something and it's like, holy shit, he jizzed.
Yeah, modern writers don't have any confidence. They don't use language correctly.
There is a little wrinkle I want to throw on this. So you're absolutely right that like the last thing,
I just spit water all over myself because I was still laughing at what you said.
Laughing at ejaculated, my friend. Yeah. Fortunato does that last thing where he's like, my God, man. Like, and then he stops and says nothing. And Montresor is kind of not willing to let it go. He's like, Fortunato, no answer. I called again. Fortunato, no answer still. I thrust the torch through the remaining aperture and let it fall within. There came forth in return only the jingling of bells. My heart grew sick on account of the dampness of the catacombs.
Yeah.
I love that little M dash. My heart grew sick. Oh, but no, it was because of the catacombs. That's why it was damp in there.
Yeah.
And so that it wasn't the feeling I have that I've broken this person.
This is the Niter. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was the Niter.
Whatever that is.
I think it's like it's using gunpowder. So I think it's just like dust in the air in these rocks under the catacombs that are probably not good for your health.
Okay. Apparently it's potassium nitrate, also known as saltpeter. So
yeah,
it's an irritant.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, just the idea that in this last moment, so like the ending of the piece is him being like, and it's been 50 years and no one's ever found him. But there is that one moment of like, oh, I feel a little bit bad.
Yeah.
Just briefly, and then I play it off.
Yeah. Why am I doing this? Oh well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because of the wrongs. What wrongs? Yeah. Don't worry about it. There were wrongs. That's all you need to know. He wronged me in a way, and now I feel better about it. Sure.
Yeah. I think this one is also written very readably. And I also think now that we've been talking about the word choices, I think like the words he chooses, like Amontillado, is itself a fantastic word, right?
Yeah.
Like to the American English ear, the word Amontillado is like it's beautiful. It's like Italian, French, whatever language Amontillado is from. What a beautiful word. And then their names Montresor and Fortunato. These are like such mellifluous words, and we get to hear them repeatedly. And I think he uses them to cultivate that musical sound.
He's a poet, even in his prose. Yeah, I think you're right. Gorgeous, horrifying, wonderful.
Yeah,
Amontillado. There is one part. So he's talking to Fortunato, and he reminds him of what his family crest is, which is again, evidence that Montresor was like an aristocrat. Like he had family, had heritage. He's well-known, well-respected family, or was before some mysterious thing happened that surely was all Fortunato's fault. But he says what his family crest is: a human foot door in a field azure. The foot crushes a serpent rampant whose fangs are embedded in the heel. And their family slogan is, I'm not going to say it in the Latin, but it's "No one provokes me with impunity." I think this is really interesting little thing he throws in here, right? Because so we have this idea of you have the foot stepping on the snake. The snake is being crushed. It's dead, but it's going to bite. It's going to bite and kill the guy too, right? And so like you wonder, who does Montresor think he is in this crest, right? Does he think he was stepped on by Fortunato? Probably, right? He thinks he was stepped on, and therefore is taking his revenge in the biting back. But I this is a really fascinating image because it's like they're destroying each other, right? But we don't see that in the story. Like we don't see Montresor gets away with it. He's 50 years on and he's still happy and content in what he did. But again, like the framing structure, we don't know what this is. Why is he telling this? It's been 50 years. Why are you telling the story? Who are you telling the story to?
Yeah. That's really, it's funny. Even as you were saying it, I was trying to put together like, well, wait, is he the snake or is he the foot? Because both of them,
they both work.
Yeah. My first thought is like, he thinks of himself as the snake being insulted and then biting back, but it's like, but you're not actually injured here. You're just killing this guy for some perceived insult.
And if you wanted us, the readers of your story, to sympathize with you, wouldn't you enumerate your injuries? Like instead we're just going to throw vague references to, I used to be this, I was that, I've been injured 1,000 times, he insulted me.
And
like I just, there's part of this language is like, at length I would be avenged. This was a point definitively settled. But The very definitiveness with which it was resolved precluded the idea of risk. I must not only punish, but punish with impunity. He's like, okay, I already made up my mind. I'm pissed off. I'm going to be like, there's no small part of me that wonders if Montresor doesn't fully even know exactly why he's doing this.
Yeah.
Like, what are the specific slights?
Yeah, well, and
this.
I'm just gonna like,
or maybe if this is 50 years removed, like doesn't fucking remember.
Doesn't remember why he did this. Yeah, I like that. I actually like that a lot. I hadn't thought of that. I'm just gonna read the next sentence after what you just read. Is it is equally unredressed when the avenger fails to make himself felt as such to him who has done the wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he didn't specifically say, I have to let him know why I'm doing this, but I feel like that's kind of implied. But
that's the implication of it. Yeah,
felt
this is happening
such
to you because you made me feel this way in what you did,
and he doesn't do that. He does let him know, hey, this is me doing it to you, but not why. And one possible interpretation is they both know why, and it doesn't need to be said.
The Amontillado.
It's the Amontillado. Yeah. No, but I don't think that, I don't think they do. I don't think Fortunato has any idea why this is happening. I think he's too drunk to even really fully understand what's happening anyway.
For sure. And like the idea, the imagery, I think the imagery of this one that has stuck so well with people is this, that bricking someone behind a wall is such a slow, like deliberate, torturous way to kill someone, right? It's you being forced to like look them in the eye, or them watching you slowly, brick by brick, layer by layer, seal this person in their own tomb. And it just seems like the perfect place to, in those moments, as you do this very slowly and deliberately, have a conversation with them about why they deserve what is happening to them, why I did this, like what you did to deserve this treatment. And it's just so, like, to say it very plainly, this image of bricking someone up has been used again and again and again and again throughout history, throughout storytelling. And in those stories, the writer often does that very thing when they're like, they look at the shape of bricking someone into their own tomb and say, oh, this is a scene, this is drama, this is an opportunity for an exchange of dialogue, and to really nail my themes as the person does this. It's just really fascinating to me that the origin of this idea in the story doesn't actually do that.
Yeah. I was just thinking about how horrible it would be to be bricked up in a wall while you were talking. So
horrifying.
Yeah.
And you'd probably be like, hey, why?
Yeah.
Why are you doing? I think there is maybe a slight bit of evidence towards what you said of maybe, Amontillado being this word is the code word for they both know exactly why this is happening, because he never asks why.
Yeah.
He like, there's no point where, and part of we can play off as him being drunk and in shock and not fully realizing what's happening. But we do know when it gets down to the last level, to the last brick, we specifically say he is sobered up. And he shouts to let him out, but he never says why. So maybe there is evidence, the idea that they do both know exactly why this is happening.
Yeah, and he's given up on even talking to him. He's just fighting with the chains, I think, is the implication of hearing the sound of bells.
Yeah.
Is like he sees no point in asking for mercy or trying to persuade this guy. He's just fighting the chains, which, even if he gets out of the chains, it's that's the added level of horror. Is like, first of all, you're not going to get out of the chains because you have no way of getting out of the chains. But even if you did,
to be clear, so the ringing of the bells is Fortunato is wearing like a jester's cap because he's dressed as a fool for carnival.
Okay.
That's
so
where the bells are coming.
Literal bells. Okay, I'm glad you said that, because I was thinking like we were hearing him fighting the chains and making noise. But
he's just like shaking his head, or
he's just standing there shaking or something. Yeah. Cool.
There is one angle on this I did want to address an interpretation of this story that I've seen elsewhere.
Okay.
Edgar Allan Poe, as we talked about briefly last week, had pretty contentious relationships with his peers in the writing community and the critical community. He didn't get along with a lot of them, including our guy Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. So there is an interpretation of the story that it is Edgar Allan Poe working up his frustration and desire to to murder his critics or his literary rivals by breaking them up in a wall.
Okay. I don't see a lot within the story that says that, like, sure. I mean, we all fantasize about breaking up our rivals at a wall.
Go on.
So maybe he just, I don't know, man. I think he just wanted to write a story about a horrible thing happening.
Hello, police.
I unfortunately read, like, who made up this fictional punishment of breaking someone up in a wall, and the internet was helpfully like, oh, that was a real thing that people did in the past. So, and then I was sad. So it's not
why would they do that?
It was like a punishment for adultery or something. It was up in walls punishment.
We're so mean.
Yeah, we're pretty bad. So it was used as a punishment for, among other things, treason. I thought I read something the other day that it was just for, like, marriage, sex out of marriage, and I was like, that seems a little harsh to me.
Yeah.
I mean, they were always burying people with their kings and stuff like that. Like, that's a thing people did. And then of course there were the anchorites who would intentionally allow themselves to be bricked up, but I think they would still be fed. So it's not quite the same. Anyway, yeah. But glad that doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, we might not be perfect here in 21st century Earth, but we're not doing that.
Yeah, relatively few brickings up.
Yep. All right, Matt. I think that's going to do it for us this week, right?
Oh,
wait.
Is it?
We still have the greatest poem ever written.
Uh-huh.
We have to end this thing by talking about the Raven. So, here's what I want to say. The people that have been listening to this podcast for a long time and Kingslingers before it know that me and poetry have a contentious relationship. And that's because I was always the type of kid who wanted to know what the thing was about and what it meant. Like, I am the guy that would listen to a song and then look up the lyrics of the song and then immediately need to look up any background information on why the person who wrote the song wrote those lyrics and what specifically they meant and why they wrote them that way. That was me. So poetry was like, what do you mean? It's just to make you feel things. What are you talking about? It has to. Are you not telling a story in your poem? No? What? And so I always resisted that. The one exception to that always was the Raven, because it fucking rules. And I think the Raven, having revisited it like 30 times in preparation for the show, because I literally just read this over and over again over the last few days, it manages in my mind to succeed on both the fact that it is telling, it is a narrative poem, it is telling a story, but it does have all the great things that I've learned in my middle age to more appreciate about poetry, in the way it does make you feel, the way words and rhythm and all these things can conjure emotions in you. It does both of those things at the same time. And it's pretty fucking remarkable.
It's like we were talking about last week, where he has this literary theory of his own, where he's not just writing, he is theorizing, he is a critic, he has opinions about how this is supposed to work, and he has this notion of every choice made in the construction of a work needs to be aimed at a specific effect.
Yeah.
And here, just in line with what you're saying, it's like, okay, he is telling a story. He is trying to get across a feeling, but that feeling is being achieved both through the story and through the way the words sound and feel. And all of these things amplify each other, and that's why it's so great.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think you and I are just too much on the same page here because, like, you know, we talked about The Wastelands, the poem, and that's obviously, you know, great, but it's pretty impenetrable to us.
Yeah.
And even after it's explained, I'm kind of like, okay, I guess. But
then there's people that say like poetry, like I don't need to explain it. Like,
yeah,
it should just make you, it should just engender something in you. And
yeah,
I've always struggled with that. Always.
Yeah, there's that. You know, I'm not, and I'm not meaning to lambast The Wasteland or that kind of stuff either. It's just like you and I are very much the same kind of reader when it comes to this, and so I think we both just love this specific poem for this similar reason, so that it's doing all the stuff that we love at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just remarkable. I mean, that is the thing that I just couldn't get over in and reading Poe's like theory of composition, and he basically, we talked about this a little bit last week. I'll focus on it a little more here. He basically goes beat by beat, step by step, and how he wrote this thing. And he says, look, here's how you write poem. The how-to guide for how to write The Raven. First of all, you want to start with how long the thing's going to be. And he basically goes on for a couple of paragraphs about how if you're going for a poem and you're going to like engender, I don't know why I use that word again. If you're going to try to get a person to feel something in such a way that I'm struggling to word this, but basically like everything a person reads either is read in one sitting or multiple sittings. And if you're trying to get someone to feel something, you should write something that's long enough for them to read in one sitting, because having multiple sittings brings in other emotions. It brings in the world. It distorts the emotion you're going out for. So he's like, okay, one sitting. I found personally about 100 lines is the best for like a one sitting thing. So he goes, yeah, it's gonna be 100 lines. And he's like, and then he adds at the end, The Raven, as it turns out, was 105. And it's like, oh, you're so fucking confident in yourself, dude. But so he goes, he picks the length first. So he's sitting down to write The Raven, blank canvas. He's like, this is going to be about 100 lines long. And then he says, what's going to be about? And he says, well, beauty. It's going to be about beauty because like that's poetry is best at capturing the idea of beauty. But how are we going to talk about beauty? Well, so he's got to pick tone, and he's like, well, you know, the best way to beauty is through melancholy. So it's going to be a melancholic poem. And then he goes, okay, so what do I want to do with it? This is all before he's written a single word. He goes, well, I really want this idea of like this rhyming, like multiple use word that I'm going to end each stanza with. It's going to be the same word, and I'm going to distort the meaning of it each time, and it's going to be a little bit different. It's going to mean something different. It might be used a little bit differently each time, but I'm going to do that. So I want to do that. And then he's like, okay, but what should that word be? And he's like, well, I really think like the sound of an O and an R together just feels real good at that point. And then he goes, and the first word I thought of after that was nevermore. And I literally out loud said, fuck you. It's like, there's no way you came up with that concept in that order and then just like landed on nevermore as like the first thing that popped into your head. Bastard.
So I kind of want to defend that's plausible, because like it's always,
I'm sure it is, but I hate it. I hate
it. I know it's just I see why you have that reaction, right? Because you're like, no way did you throw a dart at a dartboard and hit The Raven. And it's like, well, that's not what happened. What happened is he threw a dart at a dartboard, and then we have now drawn a circle around that dart landing location and called it The Raven. But like, like he's a genius who he probably could have picked an entirely different word and written in another super memorable poem that we'd be talking about. You know, I'm not saying it would be as good as the Raven, but like that's kind of what happens when you have this attitude of just like, okay, I'm gonna restrict myself to these self-imposed creative restrictions. I mean, I think subtly an important thing you said in there is when he said, I kind of like this idea of ending, you know, roughly every stanza with the same word and tweaking the meaning of it. It's like, okay, you stand back from that and you say, there's no reason why that should work. Like that's a foray into the unknown, essentially, because you don't know that you're going to find a word that where that makes sense, or that carries any dramatic weight, or that the word can be given shadings of meaning. Like how many words are there that qualify? And so there's an element of luck. But I think not just luck. Like to say it's luck, I think is very reductive, because it's like when he's a poet, he spends his whole life thinking about this stuff. When we say the first word that came to mind was nevermore, well, that's because he's Edgar Allan Poe. So the word that comes to mind is like the perfect word to suit the problem description as he has laid it out.
Yes, I completely agree. I think the only thing I call issue with is the idea that like he started with maybe like an O and an R sound together. I just think he wanted, like, he thought this word was cool, and I think that was the progenitor of this whole thing. Is he wanted to write a poem. Maybe he thought of the repeating stanza thing first, but I just don't believe the part where he's like, yeah, and I just felt like the O sound and the R set like together, just more, just that, and then I just went to nevermore. I just think he was like, I want the word to be nevermore. But from there, it's really interesting because he goes, okay, so I want this word to be repeated multiple times at the end of these stanzas. What person would say the same word over and over and over again in different meanings? And he very naturally goes from that to, oh, well, maybe it's not a person, maybe it's a creature. And what creature would do that? Oh, like a parrot. Like his parrots do that.
Uh-huh.
And then he very quickly from there went, well, parrot doesn't really work with my tone, but you know, a bird that would also do that same thing that can be taught to say a single word is a raven. Oh, boom. There it is. So like just the idea that the Raven as a poem didn't start with the concept of a raven is crazy, but it makes like the cause and effect trail of how this thing was created, like as he lays it out, makes perfect sense. And maybe it's all bullshit, or maybe he's completely being honest with that's how it went. I don't know.
I think it totally is. It's because that's what the creative process looks like, right? Where like I think that's the cool thing about poetry, by the way, is you are highly constrained, extremely constrained. Like I think we've all had to at least write poetry for school, so we at least have some amount of experience doing it.
Yeah,
even if that wasn't in many years. And like both the fun and the struggle of poetry is you're like, okay, whatever this next line is, it has to end with this sound. And I've got to have something that makes sense there. And there's no more satisfying feeling than when the right word and the right sequence of words prior to that clicks into place, and you're like, oh, damn, that actually works really well. And I never, ever, ever would have thought of this sequence of words if I didn't have the constraints of like, I needed to end with this sound, that it needs to follow this other thing. And now I have thought of something really original and clever only because of the constraints. And like that's actually how creativity really works. Like in anything truly original, this is my take. Okay. Anything truly original has to be the process of some kind of absurdly constraining prompt like this. Because if you give yourself a blank piece of paper and you say you can write whatever you want, then what you will do is you will just regurgitate something you've already seen. because that's what
Yeah.
like what else are you going to do? But if you restrict it down, then something new can actually come out.
You will be happy to know that Edgar Allan Poe agrees with you completely, and he says so in that the composition piece I read. But he basically says in that what it means is that originality is the result of hard work. That the idea that a person could just sit down and let art flow does not produce originality. Originality is intentional. It is specific and intentional work. You have to work and constantly be conscious of attempts to be original and do something new. It doesn't happen automatically. So not quite what you're saying, but I think the same idea of by through constraint, through work, through limiting. Because yeah, I mean, you look at the stanzas of this poem, and he rhymes 4 of the 6 lines per stanza together. 2 of them have to repeat. So like even in the first one, we have lore, door, and then more. So 2 of them always have to repeat and will throughout the entire thing. The second line always has to rhyme with the final 3 lines, but it'd be a different word. And it's like, how many, like this also, like, this is why I want to be like, Edgar, you also picked a word that has a lot of words that you can rhyme with. Like, you didn't just pluck this out of the ether, sir. But that, you're right. The reason he did to pick the perfect word is because he's a brilliant poet, and that's what you do. But it's just very complicated. It's very complex. Like, it's one of those things that, like, I feel like when you're a kid and you first learn poetry is like, oh, it's like all poetry is in your mind is rhyming, and that's it. And like lines rhyming with each other. And so the Raven becomes like the prototypical, like, it's like a rhyming poem, right? Because so many of the end of lines rhyme off each other. You know, again, we have lore, door, more, Lenore, floor. And then I feel like you get to a phase maybe in like high school where you've begun to believe that rhyming poems are childish, bad poems. And actually the only good poems are ones that have incredibly complicated rhyme schemes that don't feel like this da 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 da. And it's not true, but that was the perception that I had, at least. But the rhyming of this is incredibly complicated, actually.
Yeah.
Like deceptively simple, I think.
Yeah. I simply agree. Like, not just the rhyming. I mean, yes, the rhyming, but also, you know, meter is something that they definitely did teach us in school. But it's extremely.
It did not take.
but like, you notice it subconsciously. Like if sure. Even a single word in one of these sentences was a syllable shorter, you would stumble.
Yeah.
In reading it, and so that's another constraint. It's not just rhyme; it's also meter. There's also internal rhyme where he has word like borrow, and morrow and sorrow within a line. Within a single line, which is not tapping, rapping, tapping, napping, rapping, tapping. So he's continually.
Yeah, no, I didn't even mention that the third line always rhymes with the mid of the 4th and 5th line.
Yeah, and some of these are very fun.
But
rhymes.
not. I said always. It's not always, actually. Sometimes he breaks it, but that makes it even more.
But like what gets me, like, he would have been a great rapper, because I love some of his like some of his rhymes. I just had it and I lost it, but it was hold on, I was just looking at it. Yeah, not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mien of lord or lady. He rhymes or lady with made he. And it's perfect.
He, yeah.
And stayed he. You're like, I would never have thought of lord or lady as a thing to rhyme with stayed he.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's just so cool. And there's so many great images. Like, that's another thing about poetry that we are taught. We're taught about the importance of imagery. I feel like this is one of those things. This is one of my soapboxes I like to get on when it comes to like education. And I don't want to, it's entirely possible that my teachers back in high school were actually trying to do this and I was just too stupid to understand what they were doing. But,
Mm-hmm.
but regardless, like I think what I certainly missed or didn't get about the concept of imagery is like, well, why are we trying to do imagery? Like, because to me, it always seemed like this weird academic thing where it's like, okay, I get it. There's an image. Okay. But it's like, no, the point of the image is to conjure a feeling, which also resonates with the thing that you're doing here. So, like, which he does so many times in the poem, where there'll be an image, a visual image, like each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. In addition to being an incredible sequence of words, is a picture. You're seeing the embers. You're seeing their ghosts upon the floor, and you're seeing the shadows cast by the embers as ghosts, which is itself an evocative image. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming. You're seeing this, and it's a awesome, chilling, terrifying image. And these are just tossed into the midst of this poem, which is doing all these other things at the same time, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Really incredible.
It is really incredible. I also like, I've never really studied this, just like even the structure of the story, right? And one interesting thing about studying it, actually. So one thing I noticed is I've read this poem a fair amount, but I think I would be safe in saying, and I think I would be safe in proclaiming this for you as well, that growing up, probably the most we experienced of this poem was the Treehouse of Horror Simpsons episode. Did not know until today that version actually cuts quite a few stanzas out of the poem. I think for probably good reasons, but there were stanzas specifically to like him trying to rationalize where this bird came from, and it's like, oh, it's just like some guy probably owned this, and then like he fell upon hard times and like did nothing but sing like really sad songs all the time, and this is why the bird learned this incredibly melancholic name and then escaped from that guy and just showed up here. And he's like totally trying to rationalize why this bird was here. And so like in reading Poe talk about this story and reading it myself, it is constructed for there to just be this perfectly mundane, natural reason for why this bird shows up. That it's storming outside, it's windy, this bird is trying to get inside, and the only light it sees, and it's fluttering against the windows, resembles tapping to this guy. He opens the window, the bird rushes in to get out of the weather, and just chills on the part farthest away from where the person can get it, so it'll be left alone. And then it just chills there, and it says the only word it knows whenever he's talking to it. And it's totally mundane. It's just a bird. And all the meaning of the greater meaning of the bird is placed there by the narrator, because he's feeling sad and depressed and missing his lost love. And I was like, man, I just always read this poem as like, this a demon bird visited me on a dark and stormy night and cursed me with my sadness. And like, both reads are great, right? But like, I'd never, and it's because all the stanzas that go into the rational reason for why this bird is here are not in the Simpsons version of the poem.
Yeah.
And so I just never really paid attention to them.
Yeah, I don't remember when I learned about the missing stanzas. It was a while back, but I definitely, to me, the version I'm most familiar with is the Simpsons version. I mean, the Simpsons version is great though, because I agree with you. Yes, it did cut out the stanzas, but I think the nice thing is it still kind of captures the character journey where the Homer Simpson narrator character starts out like startled that the bird is here now, but he's kind of also like mocking the idea of, tell me, what are you called on the nice Plutonian shore, in this like joking voice, and then the Raven never says anything other than nevermore, never does anything overtly evil. It's just it's a Raven with the Bart Simpson haircut.
Yeah.
And Homer then by the end is like yelling at it, and this is all just coming from him. Like that, I think even the Simpsons version is clear that it's like he's driving himself into a fit simply because the bird just keeps refuting his attempts at some kind, like insisting on some kind of meaning. You know, is there balm in Gilead? It's like, well, you know what answer you're going to get, Homer.
Yeah.
He only says one word.
That's actually the part that I never really like made that mental leap. And Poe talks about this specifically in his thing, is the idea that it becomes clear very quickly that this is a bird that knows one word, and that's it. And so, and our narrator very quickly recognizes this. And then so every question it demands of it from that moment, it, as you said, knows the answer it's going to get. So why on earth would you ask that question? Why on earth would you look at a bird that you know is going to say nevermore and say, am I going to ever get to see my love again?
Yeah.
And in Poe's mind, this is like the human soul's like unquenchable desire to like self-pity and hurt oneself and kind of revel in their sadness and melancholy, that like he's doing this on purpose. He's sad, he's destroyed, he's lost his love, and here's a bird that is just going to tell him exactly what he's afraid to hear, and he does it to himself. Yeah,
that's great.
I've never really studied. I like my studying of the poem literally up until this week was like, I'm going to watch the Simpsons episode. It's pretty cool. James Earl Jones says his voice, and it sounds good to hear. And that was it. So,
yeah, I mean, I don't think I can claim that I thought about that reading. It's funny. It's funny to, you know, did I understand that before today? Like I certainly never consciously thought about it, but I do feel like the notion that the narrator is basically torturing himself and the bird is just indifferent, and doesn't the bird doesn't even actually represent any of the things that this guy is putting on it. He is just miserable. I think that did occur to me.
It's just a bird.
Yeah.
Just a bird that knows one word. That's it.
Yeah.
But he does allow the bird to like take on that darker meaning by the end of it, right? You already mentioned that line, but like, his eyes have all the seeming of a demon that is dreaming. I mean, that's still him putting it on the bird, but it allows the bird to take on the image of what he's putting on it. Especially that part of take thy beak from out my heart and take thy form from off my door.
Yeah.
Man, I can't say these words without hearing Homer Simpson say them. Like I was telling you about that earlier. But the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping. I can't not see it, Homer.
Take thy beak from out my heart. Take thy form from off my door is the correct way of reading that line. That's how I always read it in my head.
Correct.
No, I mean the eyes have all the seeming of demons that is dreaming is just the way ravens look. Like
true. Yeah.
They just have black, dead looking eyes. So
I mean, that's literally why he says at the beginning of the show where he says the night's Plutonian shoreline. It has nothing to do with what the raven represents to him in the moment. He's just like, oh, look at this fucking grim looking weird bird.
Yeah.
What are you doing here, scary bird?
Yeah.
Why you come back from Deathland recently? Is that like that's all he means in the moment? And then watching as he hears the word nevermore and then like literally sits down and is like, oh, look at him, this silly bird. Wait, but what could that mean?
Right. Sitting on the cushions that his love will never sit on again.
Yeah. And he like literally he almost gets more angry and frustrated, but he almost gets like excited the first time he goes, Lenore, there it is. There's what that could mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can connect this to my self-pity.
Yeah.
How fortunate.
Yeah. Cause I mean, like, again, like This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloated o'er, but whose velvet violet lining with the lamplight gloated are, she shall press. And then he goes, nevermore. he's
Yeah.
he's like kind of like excited about.
Yeah, exactly. Love it.
But then the darkness comes in. Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer.
Ciao.
Y'all, if anyone is listening to this and like hasn't just stopped and read The Raven or gone and watched the Simpsons version of it, just do it.
Yeah. It's public domain, so you can just find it.
It's everywhere. I mean, all this stuff is, right?
Yeah.
Anything else you wanted to say about The Raven?
No. Love it. Always have.
Always will.
Always will.
All right, Matt. So we've read 8 short stories. We've read 1 poem. And we are about to enter upon an 8-episode series of television. What, in your estimation, does The Fall of the House of Usher have to capture from these things that we've read for it to be a good encapsulation of Edgar Allan Poe?
Well, I think that we repeatedly hit upon this idea of madness and murder.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm just referencing our list of stories so that I can say smart things that encompass all of these things. So there's, I think last week I talked about disease as a theme in The Mask of the Red Death. It hasn't really been much of a theme other than maybe also The Fall of the House of Usher itself, the short story. We have several with murder, often where the protagonist is the murderer. So I think murder is a big deal. I also think it is very funny that we have 4 different stories where animals play an important role. We have the Black Cat, we have Goldbug, we have Murders in the Rue Morgue,
the orangutan, yeah,
and the Raven. So
true.
So animals. I'm expecting at least this monkey that I keep hearing about, but possibly more.
Okay.
Breaking someone up in a wall is a thing that happens multiple. Okay, so right now I'm just kind of naming elements, right? I think your question is more, I don't know, more abstract than just naming elements that I would expect to see.
I mean, I guess what I will say is, I mean, I think like we kind of understand how Flanagan does these kind of adaptations now, where he will pick and choose elements, right? Like we will see recognizable bits of story here and there mixed in this new thing he's remixing together. But I think the ways in which, in my opinion, and I know you share this, that these things often succeed as an adaptation more broadly is just capturing, maybe not even theming, but that might be a right word, but capturing a feel. Like that's like The Haunting of Hill House was incredibly different from Shirley Jackson's novel, almost unrecognizably different, but it still captured in a lot of ways like the feel that experiencing that novel gave you. And I think the same with reading Henry James and then watching Bly Manor. And so here we again are doing this thing, and it's like, I in my estimation, a successful adaptation of Edgar Allan Poe does not have to hit specific beats. We don't have to check mark certain things, but there's a certain feel, there's a certain mood, there's a certain tone, there's a certain level of beauty in prose and writing and descriptive and how that will translate to a visual medium. Maybe in some ways very easily, right? Because it is so the way he writes, I think, is so visual. But in other ways, I don't know. I'm saying a lot of words. I don't know if I'm saying anything.
No, I'm thinking like one tonal thing that really jumps out across practically all of this almost all, maybe literally every story is this like claustrophobia,
Mm.
this like suffocating claustrophobia of, it could be the claustrophobia of literally like physical entrapment, but it could be a more psychological suffocation in the circumstance. Like, for example, um, uh, uh, the Telltale Heart. No one specifically is physically entrapped, but he's psychologically entrapped by his own actions.
Yeah.
Similar, I think, in the Black Cat. I mean, a dead body gets walled up in that one, but also he has sort of made his bed, right? So there's this like this feeling of doom, and like your fate is coming for you. That maybe that's kind of also in the Fall of the House of Usher. It's like it's like this guy knows that the walls are closing in on him, and he also does physically live in a house where he can't ever leave the house, right? So I feel like that's a tone that I'm going to be expecting. Yeah,
I like that. I like that idea. That is. I'm just thinking of all the stories. I'm going through my head of all the stories and the ways in which either physical or mental, this feeling of entrapment of, yeah, I think it kind of permeates a lot of those stories for sure.
Yeah.
I like that. Cool. I'm excited, Matt. I think you're going to get a kick out of this one. In a lot of ways, it's a very angry story, which I think makes sense. It's a very weird story, which I think makes sense. And it's fun. It is fun in the ways in which it's weird. I think you're going to have a good time with it. It's very recognizably Flanagan as well. Like you're going to be at home in this story, in a lot of ways. And then in some ways you're going to be like, oh, I didn't know he could do this. It's I so many images are flying through my head right now as I talk that I can't say anything about, but man,
very excited.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this one, and looking forward to making all these connections back to these stories that we read.
Yeah, and other ones, right? I mean, we didn't read everything, but like I said last week, and I'll probably reiterate this again in our first episode next week, the connections to Edgar Allan Poe expand beyond these 8 stories and one poem we read. There's references to things everywhere, more poetry, more stories. A lot of times it's very small stuff like characters' names and things like that, but I will try to point out the ones for everyone's benefit as we go through them. But there's a lot. There's a lot. But it's going to be fun. It's going to be really fun. I can't wait.
Awesome.
So yeah, that'll be next week. We will begin Mike Flanagan's The Fall of the House of Usher with episode 1 titled A Midnight Dreary. It's the only one, Matt, that is not titled after a story. All the rest of them all have the names of stories as their names.
Yes. Well, we know where it's from, so that's okay.
Yeah. All right. Do we want to do discussion question before we go?
Sure.
I think we had a little bit of fun here. We asked last week what your favorite Edgar Allan Poe story was. We can't read that this week because that episode isn't even out yet as we record this, but we'll read that on our first episode. So we can't ask that again. So we decided to have a little fun here, Matt. What are we doing?
This week's discussion question from Scott is which character from movies, TV, or literature would you slowly trap behind a wall, brick by brick?
Look, sometimes the punishment fits the crime, and I just want to know who has committed a crime so heinous that you would do this horrible, terrible thing to them.
And would you tell them as you're doing it, or would you just kind of do it?
I'd probably tell them
while they scream. And I had to mention that it was you, Scott, because I get too much of a reputation for being the more morbid one. And this was all you, man. So
I'll take it. What if I'm like really bad at like masonry?
Yeah, you're just like you're there's like a whole row left, and you're like, I'm out of bricks. How did I not count this properly? I'll be back.
Yeah, you stay there.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about it, but like the best joke Poe has ever written has been like the Freemason pun thing he did. Where
are you a mason? Yeah.
Yeah, are you a mason? And he pulls out his trowel. Perfect.
Yes.
All right. That's it. So yeah, that's a fun question. We'll look forward to seeing the answers to that one. But that's going to do it for us this week. The Fall of the House of Usher, episode 1 of Midnight Dreary. It all begins next week. I can't wait. We're going to spend 9 weeks on the show. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. I'm so excited.
Me too. Remember, you can reach us via email at flanaganswakepod@gmail.com or over on X at flanaganswake19. At the subreddit at reddit.com/r/doofmedia, you can answer that discussion question and just hang out, see what else is going on over there. You can check out Scott's post on Gabagool and comment on it on the subreddit. Also, don't forget you can find our episodes on YouTube in video format. You can see us pantomiming ravens doing stuff. It's good.
Yeah. Just to let people know, we've got some questions. There's been some weird stuff happening with our host for our podcast. By the time everyone is listening to this, I hope it's all been straightened out. There was some weird things where like a video version of the podcast was pushing down to Apple now, which was making people download an 8 gigabyte file that we didn't want. And I was on many long email chains with our hosting platform trying to get this all figured out. I think we're not quite there as we sit and record this, but we will be there by the time you're hearing this. So I just want to say on the podcast, I apologize for all that stuff. It's weird and I don't like it. And I don't like when I interrupt our listeners' daily schedule of things. I think last week's episode, Matt, took an entire 24 hours to appear on Spotify for some inexplicable reason that they still haven't told me. So just want to apologize for all that. And hopefully by the time you're listening to this, it's all sorted out and you won't have to deal with it ever again.
Perfect.
Also, please check out our merch store, which is not experiencing any problems and should work perfectly. Go to doofmedia.myshopify.com for tons of great merch there. As always, I want to remind you guys about our Eliza collection that is still ongoing. We are supporting her artwork in memory of her and donating to Camp Can Do. So please keep those orders in. If you haven't bought anything, like I've always said, it's not too late. It wasn't a limited time thing. We're keeping this thing going. So check out that merch store, check out her artwork and help out a great cause.
Yeah, that's right. We'd appreciate that. And if you like any of our shows, including Flanagan's Wake, and you want to support us, then please consider donating to our Patreon at patreon.com/doofmedia. Again, we have so many bonus features over there these days. We have our podcast covering the TV show From. We have Scott's new feature, Gabagool, where he talks about Sopranos. Sopranos. I say Sopranos. I'm sorry.
You got to say Sopranos, man. You're Italian.
Okay, Sopranos.
I'm pretty sure I said both in the introduction episode I've recorded, so you're actually good, but I'll still give you shit for it.
You'll get practice. And of course my serialized novel that I'm writing over there. So lots of stuff going on the subreddit, on the Patreon, I mean. So at least go check it out and peruse.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, if you don't want to do that or can't support us or won't support us or whatever on Patreon, that's fine. That's okay. We understand. You can help us out by sharing this podcast with your friends. We are starting the Fall of the House of Usher. I know you listening out there right now, you have a friend that has not listened to the podcast yet, but loves Mike Flanagan's The Fall of the House of Usher. I know you do. So why don't you text them right now and say, hey, this podcast I like, they're doing that thing on the show you like. So here you go.
Yep.
Listen to it.
Or if your friend just really likes Edgar Allan Poe.
Which they should.
Yeah.
Because he's great.
Everybody does.
Yeah. You can also help us out by leaving a rating and reviews over on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, if the episode actually shows up there when it should, or anywhere else they have a rating and review system. We would appreciate those ratings and reviews. They do help us. They do help people find us, so please keep those going. And if you gave us a bad review because of the weirdness on Apple Podcasts in the last few weeks, I understand. I do. But maybe when we fix it, just go back in there and swish it back.
Yeah. Thank you. Cool.
All right. We did it. Edgar Allan Poe, Matt. That was a great 2 weeks. I enjoyed the shit out of that.
Me too.
All right. We'll see you back here next week for the Fall of the House of Usher. Until then, we're bricking Mike Flanagan in the wall. They're doing it.
You should have seen it coming.
I'm just gonna put that last brick in right now.
Yeah.
Oh shit! I ran out of mortar.